Good evening on this 26th day of May 2026. You failed as president. UDA party tells former President Uhuru Kenyatta in a 12-page dress down.
The kind of largesse we see in government, this is now the time to cut the flesh. It is the time to cut the fat.
You are telling me to remove fuel levy by 7 shillings, VAT by 8 shillings, by 8%. Madam, you are not telling me where I'm going to raise that revenue from.
A fiery debate in the National Assembly over the fuel crisis as Energy CS Wandai maintains there is currently enough fuel stock in the country.
It is the people of Kenya who decide who their leaders are. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is an independent commission to ensure that the will of the people prevails.
IEBC boss Erastus Ethekon warns politicians against election rigging claims as political leaders renew jibes over 2027 polls. An autopsy has revealed that Brian Juge was strangled and died while in custody at Kiambu Police Station as detectives probe 2 other similar cases. So today, 2 important things happened. One, the Finance Committee concluded its public participation hearings on the Finance Bill 2026. Also, the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, that's John Mbadi, had a public forum on the upcoming budget. That was at Jivanji grounds with the Bunge la Mwananchi forum. Now, on the back of all of that today, we get into some of the details. We've put together an eclectic panel, I like to think. Nelson Ogara is Associate Director, Tax and Legal Services at PwC Kenya, to just give us a summary of what is in the finance bill, what you need to look out for. Wamboi Mbarire is the CEO of the Retail Traders Association of Kenya, also known as RETRAC, to talk about how all of those decisions, taxation, policy and law, end up affecting consumer purchasing power. That's the money that's in your pocket. And Raymond Molenje is the CEO of the Kenya Bankers Association. They've made their memoranda. They're calling for changes in the pay bands across the various pay bands. Reverend Canon Evans Omolo is the provost of the All Saints Cathedral. Now you're wondering why he's here. They had an interesting public participation exercise on Sunday. They also made some memoranda regarding the budget. We'll be hearing from him what his constituents think about the budget, about the finance bill, about governance, and about public participation and whether your voice is heard. What a great panel. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I hope you are, and you can do the same. Hashtag The Explainer at Citizen TV Kenya. All of that on the show that begins right now.
Live from Citizen TV, this is The Explainer with Yvonne Okwara.
Njoki Shege is our sign language interpreter. Tonight, let's begin with growing controversy over claims of election rigging ahead of the 2027 general election. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, has dismissed the claims as unacceptable, reckless and baseless. IEBC Chair Erastus Ethekon says the allegations are meant to instill fear, mislead the public and erode confidence in the integrity of the country's electoral system. Ethekon has warned that action will be taken against politicians spreading such claims. Stephen Letour with that report.
2 politicians from Western Kenya, Kakamega Deputy Governor Ayub Savula and Hamisi MP Charles Gimose, have sparked a fiery debate over the credibility of next year's general election.
Mama Suluhu. Naangalia intelligence ya William Samoei Ruto. Gani intelligence iko juu? Sasa Mama Suluhu akishinda na 97%, sisi hapa Kenya tutashinda na 100%. Na hiyo itawezekana.
Hizi kubali watu wengine watufanyia madharau na tuwache utume wetu. Mimi Mimi naongea machache lakini I know what to do. I know what to do. To be in parliament for 3 terms. Si mchezo. Lazima ujue ukarabati ya kura. Na mimi ni mwalimu. Ndajua vile ya kufundisha wengine vile ya kufanya hiyo kazi.
The utterances have rattled the electoral body, which says the remarks are an attempt to undermine public confidence in the electoral process and compromise the independence of the IEBC. IEBC Chair Erastus Ethekon, in a statement, says these utterances, which have elicited considerable disquiet within the electoral environment, pose a real risk of distorting public perception of Kenya's democratic processes. IEBC further noted that it considers such utterances to be unacceptable, reckless, and entirely baseless. According to the IEBC chair, the utterances are clearly intended to instill fear, mislead the public, and erode confidence in the integrity of the electoral system. IEBC therefore urges all Kenyans to disregard, disassociate, and refrain from amplifying the rigging claims. Of particular concern to IEBC are assertions suggesting that the IEBC is weak, compromised, or susceptible to external influence. Such claims, IEBC notes, are not only false and misleading, but also deeply disrespectful to the institution and the constitutional role it plays in safeguarding the sovereign will of the people. IEBC now says it shall engage the relevant authorities for appropriate action, adding that, quote, "It is time political actors stopped hoodwinking the public that the election will be rigged and instead start embracing the steps set out on the country's preparedness to conduct the 2027 general election. Let everyone respect institutional independence as guaranteed in the Constitution." Chair Ethekon further says in his statement that IEBC remains fully dedicated to deliver a 2027 general election that will be free, fair, and credible in accordance with the laws of Kenya and international best practices. Stephen Leto, Citizen TV.
And still on claims of vote rigging, Deputy President Kithure Kindiki has joined the IEBC in condemning a section of Kenya Kwanza leaders linked to allegations of a plot to rig the 2027 elections, terming the remarks reckless and dangerous. Speaking in Mwandimu, Kwale County, Kindiki reiterated the government's commitment to the rule of law. But as Marianne Nyambura reports, former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua insists there are plans to manipulate the polls, claims he says Kenyans will resist.
Deputy President Kithure Kindiki launched the Magaoni Masindeni Primary School's last mile electricity supply project in Sambweni constituency on Tuesday. The DP used the occasion to dismiss claims of a plot to rig the 2027 elections.
Nataka niwahakikishie wananchi wa Kenya, kuna watu hata wanaongea kwa sababu wamepatwa na tumbo joto ati sijui kuna kura itaibiwa. Hakuna kura itaibiwa katika nchi ya Kenya.
Kindiki said it is only the voters who will decide who their leaders will be.
The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is an independent commission to ensure that the will of the people prevails. President Ruto and those of us in leadership could not have been in office if we did not have a democratic country, if we did not believe in the rule of law.
In a rejoinder, his predecessor, former DP Rigathi Gachagua, who spoke in Nakuru, accused the administration of attempting to undermine the electoral process, but maintained that the voice of the people will prevail.
Umeona wanasiasa pale magharibi wanapiga kelele ati hata rais asipopata kura ati wataiba. Sasa mtaiba kura ya Wakenya tukiwa wapi? Ati Tanzania na Uganda ilifanyika. Hii Kenya hapana Tanzania. Hii hapana Uganda. Hapa hakuna mtu anaweza tawala miaka 40, Wakenya hawezi kubali. It's not possible. So don't threaten people mtaiba uchaguzi.
Kindiki sustained attacks on the opposition, accusing them of constant criticism of government without offering solutions.
Mwaka ujao ni mwaka wa mtihani, na ile itatetea kiongozi, sio kuongea mingi, sio kimbelembele, sio kifua. Kazi ambayo umefanyia wananchi ndio itakuokoa, ndio itakutetea.
Marianne Nyambura, Citizen TV.
Now, the United Democratic Alliance Party, that's UDA, has written an open letter to retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, calling him out for what the leadership termed as pretense, after leaving behind the most broken government in modern history. In a 12-page document authored by the UDA chairperson Cecily Mbarire and the UDA Secretary General Hassan Omar, the ruling party accused the former head of state of, quote, bitterness after his candidate Raila Odinga was defeated in 2022. As Emmanuel Tona reports, UDA now says Kenyatta has been inciting young people against the government by sponsoring anti-government protests.
In a quick rejoinder hours after his hard-hitting speech that blasted President William Ruto's government for blaming him for their failures, the UDA party has returned fire in equal measure at retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, accusing him, among other things, of pretense, despite handing over what they described as the most broken government in Kenya's modern history. In a 12-page scathing attack on the former president, UDA chairperson Cecily Mbarire and the party's Secretary General Hassan Omar lambasted the former president for allegedly handing over a collapsing economy, a suffocating public debt burden, broken institutions, demoralized sectors, and a country on the brink. The letter saying, quote, Mr. Kenyatta, you left behind an economy suffocated by debt and headed dangerously towards default. Kenya was surviving on expensive debt, runaway subsidies, and financial recklessness. What you handed over was not a functioning economy, it was a ticking time bomb. The party adding that President Ruto has spent the last 3 years cleaning up the mess Uhuru created in 10 years he was in power. The ruling party turning to the agricultural sector, claiming the former head of state oversaw a fertilizer price which hit the highest ever of 7,500 per bag. The party touting some of the reforms in the sector, including lowering the unga prices, which were left at 250 shillings per 2 kg packet to retail at between 120 and 140 shillings per 2 kg packet. The letter further goes to state that the former president failed in the universal health care. The defunct NHIF allegedly became a corruption pit, drowning in debt while millions of Kenyans remained uncovered. Omar and Mbarire adding that by the time you left office, NHIF had only about 8 million active contributors and debts exceeding 32 billion shillings. The party now boasting of 31 million members in the Social Health Authority program. The party also accused former President Uhuru Kenyatta of leaving behind confusion and collapse in the education sector. UDA saying President Ruto had turned the sector around, saying, quote, more than 100,000 teachers have already been hired, with 20,000 more set to be recruited this year.
The government saying it will be using.
The UDA party also accused the former president of abandoning the affordable housing project out of cowardice, indecision, and political fear. UDA also blamed Uhuru Kenyatta for contributing to Kenya's fuel problem, adding that Kenyatta left behind a fuel subsidy debt of over 156 billion shillings. The ruling party concluding by calling out the former State House occupant, alleging that since leaving office, he has been plotting to destabilize the government, saying, quote, you are increasingly inciting young people against the government, exploiting their frustrations and emotions, not to build the country, but to advance your political bitterness and vendetta. The letter ending by saying, quote, please, Mr. Kenyatta, let us stop the pretense. Emmanuel Tol, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Now, the Democracy for the Citizens Party leader, Rigathi Gachagua, has come out in defense of retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, saying he has the democratic right to speak about any national issues despite retiring. Gachagua, who attended a funeral service in Nakuru County today, also called out the Kenya Kwanza leaders, whom he says are beating drums of war with reckless tribal statements about communities.
He mounted a spirited defense for retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, who has come under a barrage of attack from the Kenya Kwanza troops a day after he called out the government for trading blame games instead of working. Former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, who attended the funeral service of the Full Gospel Church's General Overseer Bishop David Masharia's wife, Reverend Catherine Masharia in Nakuru County, told off those who are castigating the former head of state.
Wachana na Rais Uhuru Kenyatta. Rais Uhuru Kenyatta alistaafu. Ako wake Shaweli na kula mali yake na wajukuu. Huwezi kuwa ukipata shida kila siku unasema ni Uhuru Kenyatta. Sasa Uhuru Kenyatta na ako wake utamuingilia na jiani. Sasa Uhuru Kenyatta ndiye amefanya SHA isifanye kazi? Ni yeye. SHA inafanya kazi? Si Uhuru Kenyatta.
The DCP party leader telling President Ruto to stop diverting attention.
Don't blame Uhuru Kenyatta for your failure. Alipatia nyinyi serikali muendeshe. Alafu mtapatana na raia huko mbele kwa debe. But for now, leave Uhuru Kenyatta to be. He is retired, but that does not mean he is tired.
Gachagua warning politicians against driving the country to the cliff through inflammatory remarks.
We don't want to see what happened here in Nakuru and Rift Valley ever happen again in this country. Na sisi tunaomba wale viongozi wanatembea na rais huko Mombasa to stop drums of war.
Gachagua also called for speedy inquiry into the deaths of several clergymen, including PCEA Reverend Julius Ngare Nduma and Catholic priest Father John Ndegwa Maina.
If the men of God are not safe, who is safe in this country? That is a question I had asked 2 weeks ago. But the events of the last 2 days have even brought a bigger question. If the president is not safe, who is safe in this country?
This comes as the DCP candidate in the Ol-Kalou parliamentary by-election, Sami Kamau Waweru, presented his nomination papers to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission (IEBC) in preparation for a grueling contest with UDA in mid-July.
Tunakuheshimu lakini wewe William Ruto wewe. Tunakuheshimu lakini basari mtakuwa mna apply nyumbani, unapatia mtoto form, anarudisha huko shule, inachukuliwa, tunawapea, zinapelekwa wapi? Shule.
Emmanuel Tor, Citizen TV.
Let's take a look at what's happening in the world of sports for a moment. Football's world governing body, FIFA, has rejected the suspension of Football Kenya Federation President Hussein Mohamed, terming the procedure taken by 9 members of the National Executive Committee defective. In its statement, FIFA called for strict conformity with FKF Constitution to safeguard the stability of Kenyan football, warning of consequences if the Federation's regulations are violated. Ayub Abdikader reports.
It's against the backdrop of the move by the 9 members of the National Executive Committee. FIFA issued a heavily worded 2-page statement stating specific demands made to establish whether measures adopted complied with FKF Constitution were not met, adding that information and the paperwork provided by the NEC members did not demonstrate applicable procedural requirement, rejecting the process that was followed. The Global Football Governing Body further stating that it does not recognize decisions taken by the members of the NEC, saying they were not adopted in full compliance with Article 41 of the Federation's Constitution, which envisions procedural compliance and fair hearing for affected officials. And in outlining consequences, FIFA further stated that actions taken by members of the Federation in violation of Football Kenya Federation Constitution, rules and regulations may expose the individuals concerned to consequences including potential disciplinary measures. The National Executive Committee members have since written to the Federation's president to convene a NEC meeting outlining 8 agenda items, including the presentation of the 2024 CHAN Preparations and Financial Expenditure Report, Football Governance and Administrative Affairs affecting the Federation. Ayub Abdikader, Citizen TV.
And now to the fuel crisis. Fresh from recess, members of parliament engaged in intense debate over measures to ease the soaring cost of fuel. The motion tabled by Ndia MP George Kariuki exposed sharp divisions over proposals to cut fuel taxes. Kiharu MP Ndindi Nyoro's call for budget cuts across government institutions also drew strong resistance from both majority and minority leaders.
A motion by the chairperson of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, George Kariuki, on deliberations over rising fuel prices sparked intense debate in the House. MPs floating proposals on how best to cushion Kenyans from the rising cost of fuel.
We lower the margins of the importers and the people involved in the oil business. And I'm proposing 4 shillings because, Honorable Speaker, it used to be 12 shillings, now it is 17 shillings.
When you tell us that we can reduce VAT, we can do away with VAT, you know, as a member of this House, that whatever you give, something else must give in.
You are telling me to remove fuel levy by 7 shillings, VAT by 8 shillings, by 8%. Madam, you are not telling me where I'm going to raise that revenue from.
The government's G2G fuel import deal also came under sharp criticism, with some MPs describing it as opaque and a conduit to siphon money from the government by top echelons.
That is where the theft is. That is where Kenyans are being squeezed and are being conned on oil prices. And it is time to audit the G2G framework. And
somebody is telling me that the oil of Kenya does not pass through the port of the Strait of Hormuz. When have you become an escort of a ship coming to Kenya?
It is an animal called G2C, Government to Cartels, Honorable Speaker, but we like calling it G2G, Honorable Speaker. The government of Saudi Arabia and the government of UAE in that G2G, on this other side, they are dealing with a cartel which is milking Kenya's, Honorable Speaker, of their money. That there are people currently smiling out of profits.
Beyond tax cuts, some lawmakers propose critical austerity measures.
The kind of largesse we see in government, this is now the time to cut the flesh. It is the time to cut the fat.
You are just saying there is largesse in government. No, as a good economist, the way you are trying to portray yourself, you should tell me, remove these taxes, and this is where you will raise the revenue from.
Let's retreat to our constituents or constituencies and try to do the best we can, including urging the government to give food subsidy to the people.
With the majority and minority sides aligned in defending the government, MP Ndindi Nyoro accused them of looking the other way at the expense of Kenyans.
We now have a government that has been swallowed by the opposition, and the other way around, an opposition that is in government. Who will stand in for Kenya's, Honorable Speaker, if we don't fill up the gap, Honorable Speaker? We must do what we must, Honorable Speaker, because the current situation...
The standoff over soaring fuel prices persists, with the government maintaining the crisis is driven by global economic factors. Melita Oletenges, Citizen TV.
And still on that issue, Energy Cabinet Secretary Opiyo Wandayi has assured the country of adequate fuel stocks despite shortages reported in parts of the region following the ongoing war in the Middle East. Wandayi, who inspected petrol stations in Nairobi and Machakos counties, says the government remains committed to ensuring uninterrupted fuel supply and has called on Kenyans to remain calm. He added that Kenyans could soon benefit from reduced pump prices once global conditions stabilize. Here's Gatete Njoroge.
As concerns continue to rise over the soaring fuel prices and shortage experienced in a number of countries in the region, Energy Cabinet Secretary Opiyo Wandayi has moved to allay fears that Kenya could face a similar crisis. Wandayi, who on Tuesday toured several petrol stations in Nairobi and Machakos counties to assess the availability of petroleum products, says the country currently has adequate fuel stocks to keep the economy stable and running.
All our storage facilities, the pipeline, is full of petroleum products. As a matter of fact, the ships, the vessels, are lining up at the port, waiting to discharge. And that tells you that in terms of the supply chain, normalcy has returned. normalcy has returned because of the measures the government has put in place.
While acknowledging the challenge of soaring fuel prices, which has led to reduced purchasing power among Kenyans, Wandai says the situation is temporary due to the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, promising that once stability returns to the region, Kenyans will benefit from reduced pump prices.
That even though we cannot predict how the situation obtaining in the Middle East will end or when it will end, we are sure that when and if it ends, the benefits that will accrue will, of course, come down to the consumers in Kenya in the fullness of time.
As the country witnesses protests triggered by the hike in fuel prices, the Cabinet Secretary has urged Kenyans to remain calm and called on opposition leaders to act patriotically, saying the fuel crisis should not be used to score political points.
Such incidents must be a thing of the past. As we move forward, let us exercise responsibility, even for the politicians. Let us be patriotic. Let us be patriotic. Whether you are in government or not, we must all understand that we only have one country.
Wandai, who assured the country not only of sufficient fuel quantities, but also of quality standards, has warned players in the sector against hoarding the commodity in anticipation of price increases. He insists that action will be taken against any violators. Gatete Njoroge, Citizen TV.
The Independent Policing Oversight Authority, IPOA, is tonight investigating the deaths of 3 people in separate police cells over the weekend. The incidents, which have sparked public concern, occurred at Kibera, Kariobangi North and Kiambu police stations. A postmortem on Brian Njunge, who died while in custody at Kiambu police station, revealed he was strangled. Autopsies on Peter Kiru, who died at Kariobangi North, and Bernard Nyakwama Omae, who died at Kibra police station, are expected later this week. Ode Francis reports.
3 deaths, 3 police stations, 1 troubling weekend. Peter Kiru, Bernard Nyakwama Omae, and Brian Njunge Ndunge all lost their lives after spending time in police custody. Now grieving families are demanding answers from a justice system meant to protect citizens, not leave them dead behind bars. After the mystery surrounding Bernard Omae's death is only deepening, arrested in Utawala by officers linked to the Rapid Deployment Unit, RDU, his final stop, Kibera police station, he never made it out alive.
Tulipata tu information ati amekufa tu, na hata si polisi walituongelesha. Tuliambiwa tuna marafiki zake. We just need to know why the RDU police did that to him. We just need the truth. We demand for accountability for Bernard's death.
At Kariobangi North, Peter Kiru's death on May 17th was concealed until his family stumbled upon his body a week later at the Margaret Kenyatta Hospital morgue.
Hapo naye pengu wakaenda ndani. Hawa waili walimiki kutoa dhao ili wetu walikosa dhao, akakosa minisi ya kupigia mama yake, akakosa minisi ya that's why alilala. Date 17 Sunday ndio walifanyia hiyo kisanga. On Monday watu wa Rauda wenye wanafanya kazi nao ndio walienda kumwangalia. OCS aliwaambia ako kotini. Kumbe mtoto ako mochari, anawaficha kwa nini?
For Brian Njunge, a landlord dispute ended in arrest. Hours later, he was dead inside Kiambu police station, his body allegedly found hanging in one of the cells.
They were demanding to see him, but nothing like that came. They were just being taken round and round. When they finally saw him, he was dead.
Chief Government Pathologist Johansen Oduor confirmed Brian was strangled, a revelation that points to deliberate killing, not an accident.
The manner of strangulation is what is still in contest, and that will be addressed by the ongoing investigation.
Enough of blood in police cells. In the work of the police is actually to protect, to arrest, and actually to serve the people, not to deliver dead bodies.
Autopsies from Peter Kieru and Bernard Omae are scheduled this week as IPOA closes in on officers linked to the 3 deaths in custody. Police stations are meant to guarantee safety and justice for suspects, but the rising number of deaths in custody raises questions on the very safety for Kenyan cells. Ode Francis, Citizen TV, Kiambu County.
All right, let's take our first break here on the program. But I'm already seeing quite a few of your tweets tonight regarding the Finance Bill 2026. I see Raz Bashir asking, why does every finance bill seem to target ordinary citizens more than politicians and senior government officials enjoying huge perks? Well, that is the discussion we're having right after this break, when we focus on the hearings that continue to take place in the country. Reverend Canon Evans Omolo from the All Saints Cathedral joins us, as does Raymond Molenje, who's the CEO of the Kenya Bankers Association. Wamboi Mbarire, also from the Retail Traders Association of Kenya, she's the CEO there. And Nelson Ogara is Associate Director, Tax and Legal Services at PricewaterhouseCoopers Kenya. Today, we delve into some of those issues that are most important to you in the Finance Bill 2026. All of that when we return here on The Explainer. On The Explainer tonight, experts dissect key provisions of the Finance Bill 2026. And now to the portion of The Explainer tonight where we delve into the Finance Bill. The Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry is warning that the government's taxation policy, as contained in the Finance Bill 2026, threatens to stifle the country's competitiveness. Central Organization of Trade Unions, KOTU, in its submission warned that the proposed bill hands Kenya Revenue Authority excessive powers over taxpayers through tax returns and appeals processes. Seth Olale followed the proceedings.
While acknowledging that the proposals contained in the Finance Bill 2026 could widen the country's tax bracket and strengthen compliance, the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, however, believes that several proposals in the bill may increase the cost of doing business.
We therefore urge this committee to adopt a balanced approach that raises revenue without increasing the cost of doing business.
KNCCI took issues with proposed taxation on interchange fees, merchant service fees, royalties, digital platforms and payment processing, saying this could push businesses back to cash transactions.
So I would request and urge this Honorable House to look into the issues of pay so that we can be able to increase purchasing power of Kenyans. With that, there's productivity and all of us will be happy.
Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry stating that the proposed VAT declassification and excess changes affecting mobile phones may undermine affordability, local assembly, digital inclusion and MSME access to productive digital tools.
I think this is an area we need really to look at how to address it, because that's how the businesses are really suffering.
Stakeholders told the Finance Committee that the expansion of commissioner powers under the Tax Procedures Act should be balanced with taxpayer safeguards such as a prior notice, access to information, rights to respond, and protection against enforcement during valid appeals. Other entities such as the Central Organization of Trade Unions, American Chamber of Commerce, Coca-Cola, and Strathmore University Tax Research Center, among others, who made their submissions, warned that the proposed bill hands Kenya Revenue Authority excessive powers.
KOTU therefore proposes a comprehensive pay reform targeting at least workers who are earning up to 60,000 per month in order to increase disposable income, stimulate domestic demand, and support economic recovery.
The pay bands as structured presently are not progressive, and that is what we seek to address. And we did capture how this is likely to impact from a collection standpoint.
So the definition we are seeking to amend is a definition under the Income Tax Act, specifically the 4th schedule.
We also propose the retention of the current excise duty rate of 10% of the exercisable value.
We feel as a formalization, this is good, but then it's not really sustainable when you start speaking of the informal sector.
We have received at least 100,000 emails as submissions for the Finance Bill of 2026.
National Assembly Finance and Planning Committee are also urging the government to limit its expenditure in as much as it is focusing on income generation. This with the sole aim of cushioning the ordinary mwananchi against excessive taxation. Seth Olale, Citizen TV, Kiambu County.
The government has accused a section of opposition leaders of misleading Kenyans over the proposed Finance Bill 2026, claiming they are spreading misinformation and inciting public against the tax measures. Speaking during a visit to several electronic shops within Nairobi's Central Business District and during a public baraza, Finance Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi sought to clarify key tax proposals contained in the bill, reassuring traders and members of the public that the measures are well intended. Citizen TV's Ben Kirui has more.
Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi spent much of Tuesday moving from one electronics shop to another within Nairobi's Central Business District.
How are you, my friend?
Seeking to clarify key proposals contained in the Finance Bill 2026, Mbadi engaging traders directly in an effort to explain the proposed mobile phone activation excise duty and counter what he termed as widespread misinformation surrounding the proposal.
Mbadi amependekeza ndio kwa hii Finance Bill. Hii simu yako unaleta na hiyo 1,000 yes. 1,000. Yes. Unaweka. Hakuna ushuru. Ndio. Siku ile umeuzia Mbadi, ukikuja hapa nisimame pale, ndio uniuzie hiyo simu, basi utanichaji.
And while speaking during a public baraza to the iconic Jivanji Gardens, Mbadi accused the sections of the opposition of deliberately distorting the contents of the bill for political gain. He warned that such narratives risk fueling unnecessary tension and anxiety among Kenyans.
Mtu mwingine anasoma kwa haraka, anasema excise duty inaongezeka kutoka 10 mpaka 25%. Hawaambii as we move it to 25%. There are others tunatoa.
Under the proposed bill, the government seeks to introduce a 25% excise duty on every mobile phone activated within Kenya, a proposal that has sparked debate among traders, consumers and political leaders.
And foreign relations.
In what appeared a coordinated effort, upon resumption from recess, members of parliament took the opposition head-on, accusing the leaders of misleading the public by drawing parallels between the Finance Bill 2026 and controversial clauses contained in the Finance Bill 2024.
This bill has a process. We'll go through the processes and motions of the House, Honorable Speaker. And I say that, Honorable Speaker, as I invite all Kenyans not to believe the disinformation, the propaganda that is all over on social media.
Mr. Speaker, there are people who are still stuck at the Finance Bill of 2024. There are people, very senior members of the society. Some of them who want to become president, Mr. Speaker. Like my deputy, my majority leader's party leader, Honorable Kalonzo, who are telling Kenyans that land is going to be changed, all freehold land will be changed to leases, Mr. Speaker. I have not seen that kind of finance bill in this house.
Let us take time. Let all leaders, including CSs, some of whom I must come as lazy, go out there and explain what is in the finance bill.
Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, while in Murang'a, dismissed the claims that the Finance Bill 2026 seeks to impose taxes on leasehold and freehold land ownership.
No, unadanganya ati kwa Finance Bill there is a taxation on land, and it is here, it is published, and there is nothing like that. Tukumbuke vile Kibaki alikuwa akisema bure kabisa.
The National Treasury is targeting to raise 3.5 trillion shillings in revenue for the 2026-2027 financial year through measures aimed at widening the tax base and enhancing electronic and digital tax compliance. Ben Kirui, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
So let's talk about that some more now with my guest tonight, Nelson Ogara, who's Associate Director, Tax and Legal Services at PricewaterhouseCoopers Kenya. Thank you for being with us. Wamboi Mbarire is the CEO of the Retail Trade Association of Kenya. Raymond Molenje is the CEO of the Kenya Bankers Association. And joining us live from Eldoret, Reverend Canon Evans Omolo, who's the Provost at the All Saints Cathedral here in Nairobi. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Nelson, perhaps to begin with you, paint for us the picture or the setting in which we now have this Finance Bill 2026. What's the state of the economy, both here and globally, that we're now facing as this bill is being debated and discussed?
Okay, thank you, Yvonne. I think, as we know, there has been a challenge globally and even locally in the economy. For example, if we see what has been happening in the Middle East, Iran, the destabilization and the supply disruption. So that has impacted. And this need for balance for governments, and particularly for Kenya. So the need to raise tax revenue is still stands there. And if we look at the Finance Bill 2026, you look and see what room was there. Did the government have enough room to wiggle room? And that room is really reducing. If you look at opportunity to increase tax rate, not there. So if I look at the Finance Bill, the Finance Bill 2026-2027, you find the government using an approach of widening the tax base. So that's really what is till there. How do you widen the tax base in the sense that you bring more taxpayers into the net? And we've seen that through a lot of the administrative, granting KRA a lot of administrative powers to carry out certain actions. So, for example, in this Finance Bill, now there is a proposal where KRA will be able to originate assessments, raise assessments using the data that they have, whether it's eTIMS information being there. So that's really to widen the tax base. And we know those proposals, we've just had submissions, there will be a lot of changes in terms of whether does it really align with the self-assessment system that we have. We've also seen KRA go through tax technology, the use of technology, the eTIMS, bringing in more into the net. In fact, today morning, very interestingly, I was meeting a friend of mine who is an entrepreneur. And one thing he said is that for me to manage my cost, I ensure that whoever I'm trading with is eTIMS registered so that I can claim that. So there's that also, the tax technology. Then we have the amnesty that has come back. So this amnesty now is extended, covering up to 31st December 2025. And it's an opportunity for taxpayers to review their affairs and then declare, so that they only pay the principal tax, but the penalties are waived. So we see all these changes being from the administrative perspective to deal with that challenge of there's no room to increase tax in terms of the numbers. But a bigger one is just what we call the tax expenditure rationalization, where we are seeing some of the exemptions being removed, tax incentives. And with this, then we find that there is a tax being retained so that we can collect something. There's also the movement of some of the goods that were zero rated to become exempt. So in a way, so when we look at this change, yes, literal room, but some tax is needed, because when we look at FY26, FY27, if you look at KRA's strategic plan, the government is looking at increasing the revenue because the economy is expanding.
And we'll talk about this, I call it proverbial widening the tax base, because we've talked about this for years, but it still seems like we go back to the same narrow group of people, the salaried, which still remains easier to do. And you talk about, the little wiggle room that's left. We'll come back and talk a little bit about what that means. And maybe if the wiggle room is on the other side, that's expenditure and what the government can do to trim that. We'll talk a little bit about that. Raymond, you've made submissions and you've talked about, I think part of the theme was taxation for thriving economy rather than survival. Do you think our taxation system is just basic survival? Like to just make ends meet? What do you mean by that theme?
Yvonne, we actually in our submissions, and majorly in the Finance Bill 2026, we are looking at it differently. And what we see is there's an opportunity for the country, for the economy, and for citizens. Not Citizen TV, but for citizens, Kenyans.
Those ones too.
To be able to resolve three of the most challenging matters that we have. So we have looked at the ecosystem, and what we are urging government through the Finance Bill 2026 is to be able to take a policy shift that will be able to address these three angles. So we proposed for a 5% pay-as-you-earn reduction for all workers in Kenya.
Across all the...
Yes, all the tax brackets, the pay-as-you-earn brackets. What this will do, we will be able to release 28.1 billion Kenya shillings back within the economy circulation. Where is that 28.1 billion coming from? Last year, 2024-2025, KRA was able to collect 560 billion Kenya shillings. Now, if you do 5% of the 560 billion, you get to 28.1 billion Kenya shillings. That's the amount that we are looking to be able to have it released back to the economy.
And what does that do?
And then it addresses the three things. So one, we're able to expand the economy year by year. In the first year, we're expanding the economy by 210 billion Kenya shillings. Number two, we are able to create new jobs within the economy. And the analysis that we have done, we are able to create 36,000 new jobs within the economy on the first year and then subsequent years. And then number three, again, we are generating more taxes for government. Again, from this figure of 210 billion Kenya shillings, KRA is able to collect 33 billion Kenya shillings. Now, when KRA collects 33 billion Kenya shillings, that offsets the 28.1 in the first year. And that's the plea that we are urging government. And we've been on this call for almost 1.5 years. With government, I've had discussions with MPs, the Finance Committee, the whole Kamkunji of MPs in Mombasa. I've been privileged to have this conversation with a committee of the cabinet. And it addresses the major aspect on expanding the economy, creating new employment, and expanding the tax base, as Nelson is indicating. So it's one clarion call that citizens, Kenyans, are urging, and I've seen the submissions. They've been overwhelming on this particular angle. So ours is to urge the policymakers to be able to listen, and let's work on the numbers, and then let's partner, because as banks, we are very big in promoting businesses, small and micro businesses. So we'll partner with government and be able to realize that this economy is expanding, we are creating jobs, and government is realizing the revenue.
Yeah, and that would certainly put more money in the pockets of consumers and citizens. Wambui, before we talk about that proposal, paint for us the picture of a consumer today and what their purchasing power is looking like. Say today compared to the last 2-3 years even.
Thank you, Yvonne. I think I'll start with not 2-3 years. I'll start with immediately post-COVID. We thought COVID was bad, but COVID was not as bad as, say, the next year after COVID. But the next year after COVID was actually better than today.
Oh.
So we recouped and recovered the challenges of COVID faster, and people are able to go back to their average shopping basket within like 2 years of COVID. Our basket value now is on average 700 shillings. And what are people...
Explain that to us.
So 700 shillings means an average of what it is you carry out of a supermarket on any time you walk in.
700 shillings.
700 shillings.
Okay.
Traditionally, if you think back about shopping at the end of the month, the queues at the till were trolleys full of stuff. We don't see that anymore. In fact, I rarely hear anyone complaining about queues at the till anymore because there are no tills. Shopping trends have changed to, I walk into a supermarket because I need milk and bread today. I will go back the day after tomorrow for cooking oil and vegetables. Then I'll go. We're not doing a lot of bulk shopping. And hence, we saw a bit of growth in what we call wholesale because of trying to save that money and people coming together to start shopping together to save that money. So definitely not a good time. And we say, post-COVID, your salary was stable. A few guys got pay cuts, but generally, salaries were stable. So your purchasing power kind of remained constant. But post-COVID and to today, we've had dents, and Raymond is the numbers expert. We have dents in terms of increase in SHIF, housing levy, tax brackets have continued to eat into that. So we have the same salary of 2021-22 in this year that has an extra 3 items being removed. So there's no way we can grow based on that. So to add on to what Raymond is saying, if we reduce that 5%, it puts money in my pocket. It puts back money in my pocket that I had perhaps in 2020, or a bit of it back into my pocket, which means that I can then buy more. If I buy more, the manufacturer has greater demand. So the manufacturer has to expand his capacity, and expanding his capacity is creating jobs. And at the same time, the farmer then has, who's the raw material person, has a greater demand. So the only way an economy grows is by citizens having money in their pocket, not by being taxed more. So put money in the pocket so that we are able to generate demand, which then pushes, the pull is backwards to allowing us to then really grow the economy and expand the number of people able to pay tax. That is one. Two, we have constantly complicated the issues of collecting tax. It's the reason we can never expand. Because the more we put a new 5%, 2% there, we are now moving 16%. No, let's go back to 8%. I don't want to deal with it. As an SME, for example, I'd rather go back to keeping my money in the house so Raymond never sees it, because I don't know who Raymond is talking to. As there's all this KRA getting more powers, they now can access my M-Pesa. Why would I want money in my Pesa? Please pay me cash. And a cash economy kind of works backwards. So.
Yeah, that's such a great illustration of what that means. And there's also the issue of increased compliance, and we'll talk a little bit about that, you know, in a moment, what that means for retailers. Just, you know, we also, another proverbial term is the ease of doing business and licensing and all of that. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Provost Evans, you are with us. So, Provost, you've made some submissions on behalf of the church regarding the budget, but you also had a public participation exercise for your congregants on Sunday. Maybe you could tease out some of the issues that are coming out of that process.
Yeah, thanks, Yvonne, and delighted to join in the explainer conversation alongside my very able co-panelists tuned in from Eldred. Yes, All Saints Cathedral is a city church that is deeply concerned about the welfare of the people, the governance, and we have robust processes of engaging in these matters. On Sunday, we hosted quite a very, very interactive and deeply engaging conversation around both budget and finance bill proposed 2026. Key of the issues that were coming out, Yvonne, include what we really bemoan, which is the process of public participation. From our end, we've not seen public participation sufficiently undertaken. Begin all the way from CS Treasury. When CS Treasury presented his budget estimates to the budget committee, executive did not begin by engaging the public. So there was no public participation from the executive side. When he also presented the finance bill proposals to the Kuria Kimani-led finance committee, again, there was no public participation. So public participation then begins from Parliament, then invites the people. We feel, number one, that there is no robust and proper engagement of the public. I'm saying this because it's an all-digital email thing. How does Yvonne's grandmother in the village or Wamboi's uncle deep somewhere in the village get to be part of this process and have their voice heard? Is it a Nairobi-only affair? We are only seeing public participation being driven largely now by the media houses and a few outlets here and there. So number one, we really fault the government, beginning with the executive and Parliament, in the manner in which public participation has happened. But the second key thing that was coming out, even just as I leave that one, I think we would propose, even for future, that it would be good when people make submissions. I heard the chair of Finance Committee say that they received over 1,000 emails to this effect. Could they publish and enable us to know what were the key issues that were submitted? Could they analyze those themes and what issues were considered, which ones were rejected and why? So that we really know that this is not a mere peer exercise, but a process that involves deep listening. The second thing that really came out is definitely what has been spoken about, and Raymond has brought it up very clearly, the heavy taxation of the Mwananchi. The church that by God's grace I lead is a city church that represents a cross range of Kenyans from all spectrum. They are complaining that taxation is a lot much higher, and that then means the cost of living is very high, so they are not able to really function. So cost of buying food, as has been explained very heavily by Wamboi, driving agriculture, even for those who are involved in farming, manufacturing has become incredibly high. Cost of health has been much higher. There are no medicines in our hospitals, equipment in different hospitals either are broken down or are not there at all. And therefore, adding more taxation then doesn't really add so much value to the common people. And that's, for me, what I'm hearing on the ground. And they're asking, yes, we know that it's our responsibility to pay tax because economies and governments grow and are managed by taxation, but we get more incentivized to pay taxes with joy, not groaning or mourning when we see our taxes deployed correctly. And so, Yvonne, those in a nutshell are some of the key concerns that the forum we held were bringing out, among many, many others that are contained in our submissions.
Yeah, thanks, Provost Evans, for that. The issue of tax efficiency, you would get more people, perhaps more willing to pay taxes when they see or feel that their taxes are being used adequately as they should. We have much more to talk about. Compliance issues, expenditure. Is there any room for government to cut down on the expenditure as a way of balancing things out? Much more of that. Plus your questions and comments, I see them. We'll get to that in my panel right after this short break. Stay with us. On The Explainer tonight, experts dissect key provisions of the Finance Bill 2026. All right, welcome back to the program. We continue with our conversation on the Finance Bill 2026. My panelists here in Nairobi and in Eldoret are still here with us. We're going to look at a bit more information, expenditures, a place the government can cut down on. But before we begin, I'm informed we have the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury on the line, John Mbadi. CS, thank you for calling in. You would like to respond to the conversation that we have just began on the program? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yvonne, and thank you very much for the panelists. First of all, I would want to congratulate Citizen TV and the Royal Media Group for this very timely engagement on the finance bill. Let me just point out some corrections, and I will start with the Reverend from Eldoret. First of all, it is not true that there was not enough public participation in the budget estimates and also the finance bill. Why? The process for budget making starts as early as September last year, and a lot of engagement have been done, including sector hearings. I have personally led public participation on budget process. I visited Migori County for Nyanza province, or former Nyanza province. I went all the way to Kakamega to do the former Western province. We did public participation in Kiambu for the Greater Central Province. We went to Meru and did public participation. We had a public participation at the coast in Mombasa, and we also did another one in Kilifi. The only place that we didn't manage to do public participation is the former Northeastern Province. Now, I could not begin to discuss the details of the budget as presented in the National Assembly because the law requires that first you have to submit those estimates to the National Assembly. So we are operating within the law. But we did public participation on the envelope for each and every sector. And each sectoral line held meetings both at the KICC, and some even went to the regions to do public engagement. So there was a lot of public participation on the budget estimates, including also the tax measures. I even met, in fact, I have reported here severally that the Mitumba representatives even came to the National Treasury, and there was an advert inviting Kenyans to submit proposals on tax measures. So in terms of public participation, I don't think anyone should fault the executive. We did all that we could because, again, there is no law spelling how detailed public participation should be done. But even without the law, I have led the National Treasury in doing extensive public participation, including even after the two bills or the two documents have been submitted to the National Assembly. I'm still continuing with public participation, including today and even going forward. Now, coming to my sister, who is one of the panelists, I want to respectfully disagree with her assessment that things have become more difficult more than 2 years post-COVID. That is not factual. 2 years after COVID is actually 2022. If you look at all indicators in 2022, compared even to today, even with this war in the Middle East, clearly and evidently, all indicators depict an economy which was worse off than today. Why do I say so? Statistics show that inflation was at 9.6%. The prices of goods can only be measured, the rise in prices of commodities can only be measured through inflation indicators. That is what you call the price of the basket. Now, if inflation was at 9.6%, then how then do you say that things were better off at that time? Secondly, even if you look at certain isolated or identified commodities like unga prices, you go back to 2022, the prices for unga was way beyond what it is even today, even though today is 3 years after 2022. Go back to 2022 and check what was the price of unga compared to today. you will see the statistics. They are there. Even the prices of sugar. And I will tell you, the price of fuel, apart from this sharp rise from February to date, out of this war in the Middle East, which is even worse than the Ukraine war in terms of disruption of supply chain, you can see the prices of petroleum products were higher even in 2022. Maybe not as it is today because the circumstances are different.
All right.
Now let me point out also very clearly, I today engaged with the business people along the Moi Avenue, and I asked them, is the business bad today as it was during a COVID time? They said, no, things are not easy, but you can't compare it to COVID time. So I wanted just to point out to her that that assessment is not accurate. I wish
all right.
Yes. Thank you, yes.
So just a quick one, because I believe Provost Evans wants to perhaps ask you a question.
Right.
Yes, yeah. Provost, please carry on.
Yeah, thanks, Wanasias. We appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
Thank you, my brother. Thanks for coming on to the show to make responses to some of the discussions that are going on. I sincerely appreciate what you have described as the process that the executive and yourself as Cabinet Secretary for Treasury undertook. In my opinion and in my interaction, and I lead quite a sizable section of the society from the religious space, what you are describing and what you are detailing here are citizen forums that you hold across the board. And if I was to take that to be a yes, then I would wish a clear evidence of public participation process that you have undertaken. You've got able, very strong officers around you. Could you please upload a public participation report for us as Kenyans to look at, and as I did mention earlier, to detail some of the key thematic areas that came from what members raised, what were the issues that you considered, which ones did you not consider, and why did you not consider the ones that you did not consider. Bonasias, respectfully, that would really help us, because otherwise all these would be categorized as political fora that is meant to generally give very high level information, which are usually one-sided, telling people this and that. But I would want to see an upload of a PP report. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. CS, just hold on so that we can also get Wamboi's comments in, and then you can respond to both.
Thank you very much, CS. My name is Wamboi from the Retail Trade Association. I think the discussion is not around whether things are cheaper or more expensive. The conversation is actually about disposable income. The disposable income then and the disposable income now. The disposable income now is less because we've had increases in what hits our pay slips. So we have a higher rate of NSSF, we have SHIF, we have housing levy. So the money I have as disposable income is less. So I'm not able to buy as much as I was buying before. It is not whether things are cheaper now or not. It is about how much money do I have now in my pocket to be able to buy the things that you have said are cheaper now.
CS, you can respond now.
Thank you very much. Now, to answer Provost once again, thank you. I've heard him very clearly. And I think what Provost is asking is evidence for us to upload into our system all the documents that were generated from public participation, which is not difficult because that is something we have. We have all the report. Minutes were taken in our sessions. But I want to also tell Provost, it is not us speaking to Kenyans. In fact, the public participation on budget process this year was led largely by the youth. If you followed, and the problem is sometimes Kenyans don't pay attention to some of the things that we do. Most of the public forums that I conducted as Cabinet Secretary, I was sitting in the audience. And the people who were sitting on the stage were actually the locals. It was led by the youth. We were getting representation. In fact, all the places we went to, almost all, the National Chamber of Commerce was represented. They were bringing their representative to speak, the local representative, to speak on behalf of the business people. We had the representation from Boda Boda, we had the representation from the youth, university students, and out of that you could see we actually increased the funding for higher education loans for the students. So now let me address quickly Wambui.
Before you address Wambui's remarks for a moment, I guess the question Provost Evans is asking is to what extent does the ministry factor in some of these issues that came in? We can talk about, the threshold of public participation and the law around it, but I think the issue he's asking is perhaps what a number of other viewers are asking is this exercise one for ticking a box, or to what extent are those views, to what extent do they influence the bills, the budget, in one way or the other?
Can I just give you an example, Yvonne? Hello?
Yes, carry on. I'm listening.
On finance bill, for example, the proposal on Mitumba taxation came from the public participation. The Mitumba people came and sat with us, and we discussed. This taxation on phone, I'm just giving you two examples, is actually from public participation. I've just given you an example, higher education loans board. We are increasing out of public participation. So a lot of these decisions that we are arriving at actually came from public participation. And the public participation in Kenya has ceased from being an academic exercise. And I will tell you that the problem is sometimes we don't take interest. We advertise and we tell people, please go to sectoral hearings at KICC, submit your proposals, how you want the envelope to be shared. People sometimes assume, and then they come and say, you have just come up with figures, we don't know where they have come from. I would tell Kenyans, and I think this is a very good beginning. Going forward, let us have more and more interest when this exercise begins. Now, on the issue that Wambui raised, I still want to go back to her. She's saying that it is a question of the purchasing power, or what is in your pocket. It is both. You see, with less money, you can buy more if prices go down, and vice versa. If prices go up and you have more money, you can buy more. So, you see, the fact that prices have not been rising can make the same amount that you had in 2022, or even less, buy more. So these things balance each other. Okay. So you shouldn't say that what you are interested in is that your disposable income. Disposable income is a factor of two. It is a factor of the real salary, and it is a factor of the prices of commodities. If prices of commodities go down, with the same salary, you can buy more. Now, what has happened from 2022 is that, yes, there was introduction of housing levy. There was introduction of the SHIF. Those two deductions were not there before. And then also the tax bands were adjusted. And that has led into some reduction in purchasing power and disposable income. But again, there are certain reliefs that we have given out of some of these. For example, the money that now you are contributing to SHIF, if it was given to you as it were before, it was attracting tax. So 30% would have gone. Now that 30% is coming back. So what you are losing is about 70%. Still something, but it's not that we have not done something. We are trying to make sure that disposable income is not affected in a negative way. But we can't also do it in one day. Lastly, it is also important to understand where this economy was. This economy was in the brink of default. This economy was an economy which was struggling to pay its debt. And therefore, something had to be done. And that something which was done probably was radical, but it was a point where you choose. Are you going to default in debt repayment? And of course, the options are limited.
Okay.
Or you increase taxes. Now, we have reached a point, we are saying we can't increase taxes anymore. We have to broaden the tax base. You can still see the same people who are saying don't increase taxes are also resisting opening up and expanding the tax base.
Okay.
How are we expanding the tax base? One of the ways of expanding the tax base is to allow KRA to bring to the net many people who are evading or avoiding paying tax. When you do that, the same people who don't want you to increase taxes, and for good reasons, are telling you you are giving KRA too much power. Now, Yvonne, you are putting this economy in a serious dilemma, to the extent that this economy, if we go the way we are going, would not be able to sustain.
Okay.
And then all of us will be losers. Let us discuss soberly the finance bill, look at what is the main objective, what is the agenda, what are we trying to do as a government? We are trying to expand the tax base without raising the tax rates, and that you can only do by bringing many people who are not paying taxes into the bracket.
All right, thank you, Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi. Let's continue with this conversation. We do thank you very much for calling in and giving your views on this important discussion. Nelson, let's pick it up from where he did, widening the tax base. How does that happen? We still have obviously roughly the same number of people on iTax. Those are the salaried Kenyans. Yeah. What, 3.2 million people? That number hasn't increased significantly over the last couple of years because, we don't have more people getting into formal employment. And the idea is you go into the informal sector and you try to do that. What are some of the measures you've seen of attempts at widening the tax base? Are they enough? What more can be done?
Yeah. I think, Yvonne, you are really right in terms of, I think this subject, we've been on this for a long time. And when we look at the numbers, not increasing as we would like it to be, and as CS has mentioned, the focus now is to try to broaden the tax base. And a few years ago, we had the tax amnesty. So the tax amnesty was supposed to do that in the sense that as a taxpayer, when you come and declare your tax, then there's the data being captured. But beyond that, there are those who maybe have liabilities that are finding it hard to come up because of the amount. So with that cushion, then you'd expect new taxes coming in. But I think now KRA is focusing more on e-teams, rolling it out, because with the e-teams now, it means that we can be able to recruit new taxpayers. We're talking about instances where even the informal sector would need to be really onboarded. I think there's been a bit of a challenge in terms of to what extent do we need to have minimum amounts. So it's seen that e-teams would significantly improve that. So through the use of technology to see whether that can work and whether that would be able to expand. But I think it's also just KRA being able to use the information well. So there's creating the awareness. I know we talked about how do you make the compliance more friendly. We have the e-teams now. It's picking. It started with VAT, whereby we have pre-populated returns. We've now moved to income tax, but still a few challenges that needs to be ironed out. So the broadening of the tax base, and I think just coming back to what you said, Yvonne, you find this weight is being carried by a very small group. So how do we really move? And it's the attempt through technology that KRA hopes will be able to bridge that gap.
Yeah, and even as we talk about them being able to audit or do an assessment, correct me if I'm wrong, Nelson, but at this point, it is your responsibility as the taxpayers, not KRA, to determine your correct tax position.
Yes, right? Yes, we are under a self-assessment regime.
Okay, okay. So, and all those messages that people have been getting from KRA that are perhaps a little alarming that you have this, just so that we understand, it's voluntary filing, right? Okay. I wanted to just talk about expenditure as we move the conversation forward. you can want to collect more. We know KRA has its shortfalls year on year. But the other side of balancing this equation is cutting down expenditure. Where do you see areas for that?
Okay. Maybe even before I jump into the expenditure, just touching on the self-assessment return. In this finance bill, we have a proposal where the commissioner will have the powers to originate, to raise the assessment. And I think it's one of the proposals that will elicit a lot of conversation in terms of how it's being ironed out. We are seeing it being very complicated. If you have an assessment, we have a self-assessment now.
Yeah.
So having a self-assessment is the right approach in the sense that where you've assessed yourself, KRA can query. So if we have an instance where KRA is using the information to raise assessment on your behalf, then we'll have a complication in the sense how can they come again and challenge. So we think there are some changes, and there's really this run, the move to make compliance easier, the move to widen the tax base, but this just need to strike the right balance. Yeah.
Expenditure. Where can we cut down? I mean, cut your cloth according to your...
I think the expenditure, I can just give some comments, and then I know Raymond is the money person. We'll add something. But a while ago, I think the CS talked about zero-based budgeting. And the zero-based budgeting refers to where every year you begin with prudence, clearly identifying these are really what I need, and then building on that. So in a way of bringing more prudence, because what you are looking at expenditure, you want to look at...
Opposed to what we do now, which is, just explain that.
So now what is happening is we have our expenditure, and then we are building up. So we are looking, this last year, this was our expenditure. What do we need to really increase? So it's really an incremental basis. But when you look at the zero-based, which was muted a while ago, then we thought that could bring a bit of prudence, whereby whatever you are budgeting at, you are looking at, when I'm spending this money, is it giving value? Because there needs to be a move for value for money. But I know that's easier said than, but we hope...
We haven't implemented the zero-based budgeting so far, despite it being mooted 2-3 years ago now? Yeah, okay. So maybe that would be an area.
It was actually from CS Budget.
It was actually, yes, from the Cabinet Secretary himself. Wambui, where are the areas that we can cut back on?
You're sure you want me to answer that?
Please, go ahead.
I think we have, as citizens, we see a lot of excesses from government side. And I kind of tend to see that government only looks outward in terms of where it can collect money. It doesn't really look inward the way the citizen really has. So because the income I have in my pocket is less, we're eating less sausages, or we're going out less, or, you know, we are cutting our cloth according to our pocket. I don't know how that is really goes. So I think there's a need for government to do likewise in terms of, I mean, the conversations has always been around a bloated government. There's always the question of the different levels of government that we have, and do we need that many people? There's always the conversation around how we move as government, and is it really necessary in all the ways that we are moving? I think there's an opportunity to look inward. Let me cut it at that. There's an opportunity to also look within ourselves, and successive governments have always talked about it, or we will do this. We'll use smaller cars instead of the big cars that last 2 days. I think if government really is to walk the talk of managing itself and managing us, I think we'd find savings. I think we'd find money that we can pick up and increase capitation with, or somebody cracked a joke about how many, and may I not step on anyone's toes, how many choppers were in Kilifi this weekend. And was it necessary? Is it, you know? So I think we need to, as much as government is wanting us to be partners, they must also be partners in helping us raise the money that is required to grow our country.
Yeah. What are your thoughts around this, Raymond?
Yvonne, the CS, if he's still listening, he hasn't made any comment to the partnership that I proposed. Because I made an invitation on the fact that we need to partner, citizens and government, to build this economy. And that proposal is, how do we expand the economy? Because Yvonne, I wear two hats. I'm in private sector, but also I sit on government boards. So I have some insights on what happens to government on the other side. So I won't focus so much on cutting down expenditure. I'll focus on, can we develop this economy to generate more? And that's what we do in private sector. In private sector, when things are going wrong, we even employ very expensive resources to be able to turn around the companies. So what we are seeking from government is, how can we turn around the productive economy in that manufacturing and agriculture ought to work? We get more money for government to be able to provide services to us. Because if we focus so much on what do we need to cut, we may push ourselves to a lifestyle that we don't want to be there as a country. And that's why I'm inviting the CS on the fact that we've done the numbers for the last 2 years, and I've had a conversation with the CS, MPs, and even part of the cabinet on the fact that we can take a step which can expand this economy by 210. Why can't government come and sit with us to be able to go through the numbers and even test it, to be able to see, can it work? There's still another finance bill coming in another 1 year. We can retreat back.
Speaking of that finance bill, in fact, there's a question here. I want to see if I can pull it up. And it was talking about, the need to have a finance bill. This is from Ryle Anthony. Says, thinking out loud, why can't the finance bill changes be implemented, say, every 5 years instead of annually? That would give citizens and companies some more predictability and enough time to plan effectively.
Exactly.
Well, one of the few countries that has a new taxation measures or amendments to those literally on a yearly basis.
Yes, it's true.
What are your thoughts on that before we bring in Provost Nelson?
No, I think Yvonne, what you are raising is very pertinent, and there's been an attempt on that. We have a document called Medium-Term Revenue Strategy.
Yes.
So if you look at this document, it raises the issue of predictability, stability, what the pay, some of what Raymond was talking about, the pay moving, reducing the corporate tax, but at the center of it is actually creating that certainty. And when this document was issued, it was issued for the period, 3-year period, which is ending 2026, 2027.
Yes.
So I can say the intention is there, the idea, but as you rightly say, our taxation system is very unpredictable, especially for investors. And if you look at even the finance bill over the last 3 years, you'd find provisions that have come in, not gone through Parliament, reintroduced again, so creating that uncertainty. And so I know, back to the viewer asking for 5 years, probably maybe 5 years is a long period.
What in your view would be a reasonable time?
I think if we do a framework, proper framework, then every year we wouldn't have a lot of changes.
Okay.
There are countries within East Africa where budget is never a big thing because there are no changes.
Right.
They have done a framework, and you find there's nothing to come through.
Just before we go to Provost, I don't want to lose this point about predictability and perhaps, the issue of compliance. Wambui, I think this was raised when you made these proposals and I wonder if you can bring up this image, these proposals to the Finance Committee. And this is about the issue of compliance, because there's a lot, there's this license and that license and this one that businesses require. I want us to just show this image, and Mamboy, you can explain what this means and what this looks like. I'm pretty sure you cannot see, if we can show that on screen as well. I'm pretty sure you can't see the name of the business. But take a look at that wall. So this is what a standard business, these are all the licenses that, this is one business or?
That's one business. That's one business. So I like to use the supermarkets as an example. We tried to do a list just I think in 2023. As of then, those are like 25.
Yeah.
Those are 25 licenses that a supermarket requires, the average supermarket requires. I'd actually tried to list them. So when you start from everyone needs a single business permit, then you start. You had food hygiene, fire inspection, fish processing, billboard and signage. If you sell fish, you need one from fishery. Then, of course, there's music copyright. If you sell seeds, you need a seed selling certificate. There's KEBS, there's NEMA, and NEMA is another story right now. Weights and measures will come and inspect. You have Daily Board because you're selling milk. You have Nairobi Water. You have for effluence discharge. You have Tourism Fund. And then you have Tourism Revenue Authority fees as well. Then you have to pay parking for customers because you don't get free, and you have to pay for your parking bay. You pay for the pest control because you're selling some chemicals. Then you need OSHA, you need liquor license, you need, if you're importing liquor, you need another importation license. You have to license the trucks you're using. If you do, in an effort to reduce food waste, we do some processing in-house. So like take all your fruits and do fruit juices. Then you're a manufacturer, so you have to pay for doing that too. So that's sample. Yeah, and then the worst thing about it is usually that it's not defined. So we've had conversation, especially like with Nairobi County, of it's okay, if we must, we will, because we're not fighting compliance. But tell me that here, take your list, go get your 20 licenses, and then go do business. Because then we would reduce rent-seeking opportunities. But now you're not quite sure, should I not, what should I have? So if I had the 20, I would go do the 20. I don't need a compliance department, because we would all know once we have, and if you come in and ask for license number 21, I'll tell you it's not on the list. Unless you can prove that it's suddenly on the list, then we don't have to, who do you know at City Council to help us out there? It would be so much easier. So yes, it's a complex, there are too many. Two, the uncertainty, the lack of transparency through what we require just increases our cost of doing business.
You know, I just kept thinking we'll have to take a break at some point. So you'd have to stop listing them because it just kept going and going and going. Provost, listening to everything that we've heard here, including from the Cabinet Secretary, I guess there is a feeling, and I just want to read you perhaps a comment from another viewer who says, public participations are a charade. Listening to the Cabinet Secretary, I'm convinced that public participation is meaningless, you know, in terms of the way it is done. Because you're big, I guess, on raising the issues of governance, because we can talk about the licenses, the taxes, and all of this, but governance is a big issue that perhaps doesn't get mentioned enough, do you think?
Definitely, Yvonne. And you note that, I know my good friend the CS did not mention, neither did he promise that he will avail PPP a report, which is an evidence for us of a meaningful engagement.
He said, and I quote, that is something that can be done. They have the reports. Just yeah. Okay.
You see, okay, we'll leave it at that. But if there was a sufficient listening to the people and consideration of the many views that they brought out, we wouldn't have heard what I call such a big uproar about finance bill. And for record, from where I sit, we 100% support the position of Kenya Bankers Association to review tax burdens so as to release more monies into the economy, create more jobs. Then KRA should be able to collect a lot more. And therefore, we still feel from where we sit that there should be a better process of listening to the people. But Yvonne, allow me to weigh in on the question that my colleagues have weighed in on in terms of where do we cut, where do we engage?
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing with us is that a lot of times we get to engage with government on what they want to collect. And so we have finance bill coming up. But seldom do we have such robust conversations on how what they have collected, or rather what we, the citizens, have given, how that money has been utilized. We would want to see how money is being utilized, dissect expenditure in a broader way. So when you ask, what are some of the areas that we can cut in this budget so that taxation, as it were, a number of areas for me. Maybe I only mention two. One is on advisors. I think the finance bill debacle in 2024 raised this so seriously, the amount of advisors that are around government, around the executive. I think there's a huge need to review that. That was reviewed, then reinstated, we went back to normal. But then secondly is around issues of travel, both domestic and foreign travels, IDMs, and all that. You know, we are talking of 2.1 trillion of our budget going to service public debt. But on this other hand, we are spending like we are a multi-trillionaire country that is living in excess. So I think there is a high need that Treasury and ministries, departments and agencies very, very deliberately engage the citizens in how money is spent and clear, deliberate cut, and we track how what is saved in those areas is plowed back into the economy to grow the economy. I think for me, those are the key areas that we really need to engage in as we make this proposal for Finance Bill 2026.
All right, thank you for that, Provost. I want us to get into some of the questions from our audience, but before that, I'd like to highlight something from Stephen Motoro, who's from the Confederation of Consumers in Kenya. And this was with respect to appearance before the Finance Committee. I will find that tweet in a moment, where he declined to participate in that exercise due to the change of venue, which he talked about was wasted expenditure, and also mentioning the fact that the venue change was too abrupt and perhaps venue inaccessible to most Kenyans, and he was querying why this cannot be done within the precincts of Parliament. So just some questions regarding that there and expenditure. All right, so I'd like us to get to some questions here. This one is from Simpi, Kenya. Says, I run a computer business and photocopying and M-Pesa. I need like 6 licenses for the same business. I pay taxes on the same business. Who will explain to these politicians, because they are not the government, that we are suffocating and there is no increment in our earnings? We can put those on both screens as well, just so that we can have our guests here read that. Ms. Origi says, there is no accountability in the revenue collected through high taxes. We've been asking for audits on this national debt. We keep being told we need to pay. Sir Nixon Ndugire says, where do those promises that the president makes when visiting regions draw their funding from? Because it's like they don't appear anywhere in the finance bill. take a look at more. Jonathan Karibu says, if smartphones are now facing excise duty at activation, won't this make digital access more expensive for young people and small businesses? Does the Finance Bill 2026 risk discouraging investors by expanding capital gains tax and withholding taxes? We'll come back and talk about that, taxes on digital transactions with you, Raymond, in a moment. Yes. This other one says the bill should prioritize widening the tax base, improving efficiency in tax collection, and sealing revenue leakages instead of increasing pressure on compliant taxpayers. Naibe says the government has been preaching about widening the tax bracket, yet policy decisions fail to capture this desire, and how to achieve this instead stretches the current base, burdening an already overtaxed population. Nelson can weigh in on that tax policy and whether it speaks to this widening desire. 2 years after COVID was 2022. Inflation was at 9.6%. How could commodities have been cheaper? And look at the prices of essential commodities in 2022, not cheaper than today. For example, unga. Let's take one more and then we can come back and have a bit more conversation. There is no provision in the Financial Bill 2026 which will allow KRA to use M-Pesa transactions to assess tax liability. All right. I'd like us to pause there for a moment. Let's take a break. Now, when we come back, we'll do our closing round of thoughts on this discussion, as well as some of the issues that have been raised by our viewers. We're here with Raymond Molenje Wamboi Mbarire, Nelson Ogara, and Provost Evans, who's joining us live from Eldoret. We'll be right back. Family Bank profit after tax rises to 1.6 billion shillings for the first quarter of the year. All right, and we are back. My goodness, the conversation continued. We almost got caught up in that break. A lot to talk about. I think one very quickly, I'd just like some quick responses around the panel from the comments that we got. There was one person, Nelson, who talked about the tax policy and whether it reflects our desire and ambition to widen the tax base. Do you see a match there?
I think, and the person, if I remember, talked about the tax weight, the tax burden being borne by very few people. Yeah. And we've talked about widening the tax base, so there's the use of technology, but there's broadening. And what broadening refers to instances where a number of items are brought into TaxNet. So if we look at this finance bill, we've seen items which were zero rated actually moving to become exempt. Which was zero.
Explain the difference.
Yeah, so items where VAT was at zero rate being moved to become exempt. So you find that exempt, yes, there is no tax, but the difference is that with exempt, when you incur the VAT, if you are a trader and you are supplying, you are selling, you will buy inputs. So some of those inputs will have VAT. So if you are zero rated, then you can claim the input and get a refund. If it moves to exempt, then the input becomes a cost. So we've seen items moving from zero rated to become exempt, and we've seen others now moving to 16%. So that still expands, but there is the cost that Wamboi was talking about, where you find items that were affordable because of now this additional cost. Yes. The producers will pass it to the consumers. So in terms of the tax policy, I think it's really wide. So I saw a comment, very, very valid comment in terms of how can KRA seal the leakages. So looking at how do you really seal the leakages in terms of people who are earning taxable income, not paying tax, seeing how to bring everyone into the tax base. So it's a journey. It's a long journey, but it really needs concerted efforts. And we think that we are not yet there, but we are in the right direction.
All right. Let me now take the final thoughts. Provost, let me start with you, Provost Evans. Where do we go from here? How do we ensure that we are heard? And we'll continue now to ask the Cabinet Secretary to post the report of those public participation exercises. But your closing thoughts?
Well, thank you. I think I would have talked quite a lot about other things, but we don't have time, including zero-based budget, including outcome indicators on areas where a budget is applied, so that we are not just lumping money into specific vote heads or giving ministries, departments, or agencies, but we are clear that they're not just outcome policies or basically statements, but we want to see clear indicators. So, for example, in education, if you deploy money in education, what would be the clear outcome indicators? All ministries and departments have a responsibility of job creation. And one of the biggest conversations we are not actually having in this country is joblessness among our young people and the youth bulge as it happens. Remember, it is the youth bulge that drives this discontent around many tax proposals, because they are out of jobs, they cannot access services, as it were. When they try to get into little businesses, as we've discussed here, the levels of taxations and permits required of them prohibits them from those. And therefore, they graduate with degrees. Some of them are artisans with technical skills, but they cannot penetrate the job market. We would want to ask the National Assembly, as they go to discuss this budget, that they must demand of ministries, departments, and agencies to have clear outcome indicators that can be periodically published, and we can track them and know that these are the jobs that we are creating. These are the educational outcomes in education system out of the monies that we applied away from salaries and all that. So I think for me, that is the conversation that I'd want to see the National Assembly having, so that we do not have the likes of things that we saw in Kilifi, with young people desperate for jobs diving at the president and exposing him to further risks. Can we be deliberate and create more jobs, be able to track those ones? Then and only then we will begin to see more satisfaction and people beginning to willfully pay taxes. Even as I said off, I've interacted and lived in economies where citizens are so happy to pay taxes. They are not forced like Kenya here. Kenya, they hide, they conceal. But in economies where taxes work for the people, they very, very gladly pay it with patriotism, with loyalty, and with a lot of excitement. Let's see a difference with this government. Thank you.
We can only hope, Provost Evans. Thank you for that final thought. Raymond, let's come to you. And even as you close, digital transactions, tell us what that's about, because the digital sector has spurred financial inclusion for many who've been left out of the traditional financial system.
Yeah, Yvonne, we have been on this journey for taxing digital payment platforms and transactions for almost 15 years, and majorly in court. So there have been successes, and at the highest court, in the court of the Supreme Court, where taxpayers, the judgments were in favor of taxpayers. So KRA is now coming in to be able to ensure that they can tax. Part of it is excise duty. For the payment platforms is VAT. Yeah. So in essence, what this will do is we are adding more costs to digital payments, and that drives consumers, Kenyans who are using the platforms, into informality.
The Cabinet Secretary earlier today said that what they're doing is taxing the companies that provide the services. So in this case, if it's credit and debit card payments, but that you're taxing the Visa company that provides that service, and this is being done in Kenya, and money is being made, but it is the local sort of banks and other institutions that use this Visa payment services, but not Visa itself.
That's correct. It's taxation on the companies,
yes,
or even the machines that you insert your card in.
The point of sale.
However, the issue is it's a cost to the business, and that cost has to be transferred to the ultimate consumer. So the cost of that transaction will go up. If it was 50, it will go up to 52 or 55, because now that cost, because as a business person, you can't absorb the cost. That cost has to be passed on. So what we'll be doing is we drive the economy more into informality. And the loser here majorly is government, because we are able to collect more taxes through formal visibility of the transactions and through channels, because banks, we operate as agents. So we collect taxes on behalf of banks. And for the last 2 years, the taxes that we pay to government and collect on behalf of government actually takes care of almost 9% of all the taxes collected in Kenya, just 38 banks only. So that's what KRA will be losing. If people go informal, you can't be able to collect those taxes. So in fact, our play is transactions ought to be as actually zero cost, to be able to ensure that people transact more, you have more visibility, and then it's at the tail end of the spend. That's where you can be able to collect the VAT, the excise duty, and all the other taxes. Right. Then to conclude, I wish to thank the CS for joining us this evening in this conversation, and also thank him for the engagement he's having in the public. So in that line, CS, it's an invitation to be able to look at this country, take opportunity of the finance bill, and be able to expand the economy. And as we said, we have an invitation of expanding the economy by 210. We have an invitation to be able to create 36,000 new jobs every year. And we have an invitation to be able to ensure that we are collecting revenue taxes, 33 billion every year, only if we can be able to do the 5% pay-as-you-earn tax across all the tax bands. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll finish with you, Wambui. Let me start with Nelson, so that you can speak for the consumer as we close. Nelson, your closing.
Thank you, Yvonne. I think it's really been a good opportunity. I like how our tax system has evolved, in the sense that we can have this forum to discuss about taxes. Finance bill before 2010 used to be a secret document, but now we can talk. The CS can dial in, which was really, really positive.
Yes.
And so when we look at the finance bill, I think we've talked about really a lot about the challenges, but there are a bit of some positives. So I think the tax amnesty is a good proposal, so taxpayers should take advantage of it. There is also...
It's now until December this year.
Yes.
That's been extended by a further 6 months.
Yes, until December, 31st December 2026. But it will cover a period up to 2015. So it's good. It helps, 2025. So it helps taxpayers to clean up their records and just to be compliant. There's also another change which is positive, where now commissioners have power to waive penalties arising from anomalies within the iTax. Because part of the challenge we've had is you find taxpayers having penalties, but there was no that power. So the process was very bureaucratic. So commissioner can now waive the penalties up to the tune of 2 million, Kenya shillings 2 million. We're wishing this should not have had a limit, because what about those that are high? But there are a number of things that the government needs to look at, and I'm happy we were through the period of just submission. So what would call contentious issues, you see, like the agency notice, where now the commissioner can freeze your account or raise an agency notice if you've lost a case at the tribunal. So we are feeling there's a lot to talk about that.
Right.
Just the lack of justice, going contrary to the Constitution. So we hope that will be considered.
And just for people to know that, you go to the KRA tribunal.
Yes.
And if you're not satisfied with that, then you now go into the judicials.
Yes, so you have the court. So after the tax, after the tax tribunal has given a decision, you have 1 month to go to the court.
Right. So, but then now this agency notice notice, meaning if you lose at the tribunal,
yes,
they then can freeze your account, even
collect,
as you proceed to perhaps.
Yeah, and why this is interesting is that it's a proposal that has come in.
Yeah.
Severally,
Yes.
and it came in a while ago. They were talking about the government was talking about 30%. It wasn't passed and coming back again. So just impairing that issue of certainty of the legislation. In the interest of time, Yvonne, the other one I wanted to talk about is of retained earnings. So now, as a company, if you have retained earnings and you've not distributed dividends for a year, then the commissioner can deem 60% of that as dividends. So that has really...
And the issue with that is the prescriptiveness of the 60%.
Yes, because it's been in the law, it's been silent, so that prescriptive...
Yeah, as opposed to a conversation with the taxman rather than
being able to
pegging it at 60%.
Yeah. So those are just examples. I think the finance bill had a lot of changes. We did a lot, which was over 50% analyzing, so just showing a lot. But thank you very much for this opportunity. And again, really just seeing the profile of your station, CS, dialing in and giving comments, just opening up the space.
Yeah, we must continue to talk and raise the issues that we have. Thank you, Nelson. Homeboy, take it home.
You know, we talk about the consumer like it's somebody out there, and we forget we are actually the consumers. And to your question, for example, of what are the trends within the supermarket, or within the restaurants, or within even within the banks. If you look at your own actions, it will tell you what is the economy looking like. So anything that happens, and Raymond has actually summed it by saying, everything that happens on a tax level ends up on the consumer. Yes. Whether it's a manufactured product, whether it is a service, like banking, etc., the final increase in cost, a significant element of it will land on the consumer. So all the things that we are discussing around the finance bill, at the end of the day, will land at the consumer. Before, sometime today, we're having a conversation with one of my members, and they were saying the ovens we use for our bread use electricity and diesel.
Yeah.
All our utilities have gone up. Diesel's gone up. So bread is going to go up. And in fact, he was telling me, we used to have, one of the things about retail, we've always had a lot of shoplifting. And shoplifting used to be about things people collect and go sell. It's growing to where shoplifting is of bread and milk I go eat.
Wow. That's
really an indicator of where we are, and really the indicator that we need more money into the economy. In many forums I hear us talking about how well our macros are doing.
Yeah.
But whatever it is the macros are doing, the micros are not. Because if it was transcending down to the consumer, the cry for more disposable income wouldn't be there. So for me, it's let's really look at the mwananchi in everything we do, because at the end of the day, that cost is going to be a burden to the consumer. That is one. Widening the tax bracket really is the way to go. But if we're going to go that way, then it has to be because we are enabling the SME to be able to be compliant. It should not be punitive. It should not make them think this is not the way I want to go. And the only way we'll grow is if we formalize our SMEs. Growth can only come through compliance, I keep saying. But if you make compliance such a difficult thing, I will remain where I am because I don't know this animal that I need to go into. So can we simplify? If it's something about e-teams, how do we facilitate the small trader, the small SME supplier to a supermarket to be able to comply? Because then if the supermarket says, unless you give me e-teams, I'm not dealing with you, we are killing the SME. So we simplify the tax system to allow the smaller traders, manufacturers, entrepreneurs become compliant. And then I'll finish by saying, at the end of the day, everything is about competitiveness. I think studies have been done by various sectors in our economy to show what percentage of any product price is levies or taxes, and it's the reason we are becoming what one of the MPs said, a big supermarket, because all we do is bring in stuff. Yeah. But why are we bringing in stuff? Because you need to be competitive on the shelf. Yeah. So if I put a local product and it costs more than an imported product, it makes no sense to me. We're a country that grows potatoes, for example, and I always use chips as an example. You can buy frozen chips in supermarkets that have come from places out there,
Egypt,
at cheaper than potatoes grown locally. And it has everything to do with our compliance processes, because it goes beyond walking into an institution to get a documentation or to get authority to do something, but even the process of getting that document makes it very difficult for that SME. And then I'll end by saying everything is shrouded in lack of transparency in how we should be doing things, and that just, again, complicates compliance.
Absolutely. That's a good place to end it. I'd like to thank you all for this. I know and I hope that when we call on you again, because there's much to talk about between now and when this bill is passed, but I really do thank you for your time tonight. Wambui Mbarire, the CEO of the Retail Trade Association of Kenya, Nelson Ogara, who's Associate Director, Tax and Legal Services at PwC Kenya, Raymond Malenje, CEO at Kenya Bankers Association. Thank you for being here. You've done a double shift, I believe.
Yeah.
And Reverend Canon Evans Omolo, who's a provost at the All Saints Cathedral, Nairobi. I thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for that. We'll get into a little bit more of your feedback on this discussion in a moment. But first, let's update you on what's happening in the world of business. All right, Family Bank Group has reported a 52% increase in first quarter profit to 1.6 billion shillings. This, they say, is supported by growth in lending, higher interest income, and an expansion in customer deposits. The lender is also progressing with plans to list on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Here's Jasmine Wambui with that report.
Family Bank Group's profit after tax rose to 1.6 billion shillings in the 3 months to March, up from 1 billion shillings recorded during a similar period last year. The lender attributed the performance to growth in interest-earning assets and higher income from its core banking business. Total operating income increased by 22% to 6 billion shillings, driven by a 45% rise in net interest income to 4.7 billion shillings. The bank's loan book grew to 108.3 billion shillings, reflecting increased lending to the private sector. Customer deposits rose to 168.1 billion shillings, while total assets jumped to 230.2 billion shillings. Operating costs, however, rose to 3.7 billion shillings, which the bank linked to continued investment in technology and branch optimization. Shareholders' funds increased to 34.7 billion shillings, following a recent private placement that was oversubscribed by 131%. The lender says the additional capital will support its preparations for a planned listing by introduction on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Jasmine Wambui, Citizen TV.
The Two Rivers International Finance and Innovation Center, Terrific, has announced the launch of its 3.8 billion shillings or $29.8 million US dollar denominated income real estate investment trust, that's IREIT, aiming to raise funds for the acquisition of the fully let Terrific North Tower from TRIFIC Special Economic Zone. The IRET will be Kenya's first USD-denominated green income distributing right, creating a new asset class for investors seeking stable dollar yields with measurable impact. The bond is set for listing at the NSE on the 23rd of June for trading on the main investment market segment, while allotment to successful investors is expected to be made on the 16th of June this year upon closure of the open window.
I make you part of this very successful story. Once again, we're TRIFIC Special Economic Zone, and in the Special Economic Zone, the members that are part of our story get strategic incentives that allow them to operate in an optimal way. They offer also meaningful jobs and employment to many, many Kenyans, and we're very, very proud of this story.
We believe Kenya has barely scratched the surface in terms of this asset class. In the investment world, we call it an alternative asset class. And whether it's within the RBA, CMA, there are provisions that allow pension funds, individuals to invest in REITs. What we're beginning to see for Kenyans is that there is a lot of democratization.
More than 210 exhibitors from across the global flower industry are expected in Nairobi next week for the International Floriculture Trade Expo, that's IFTEX 2026, one of the world's leading flower trade fairs. The exhibition, which runs from the 2nd to the 4th of June, comes at a challenging time for Kenyan exporters who are contending with rising logistics and freight costs linked to tensions in the Middle East, as well as delayed VAT refunds that growers say are piling pressure on cash flows. Industry players are now banking on the expo to help secure new markets, strengthen buyer relationships, and reinforce Kenya's position as a leading global flower exporter.
One of the challenges that we have had in the recent past is a change of market requirement, and especially with the EU, where the EU introduced a new requirements that our flowers should be have zero tolerance to what we call forced codling moth. Forced codling moth is a moth that is endemic in Africa or in Kenya, and therefore you're likely to find it, but they require us to assure them that this particular moth is not in our flowers. Due to that, in the recent past, we have had a number of challenges where we had interception of our flowers in the international market.
Our members are owed a lot of refunds that would go a long way into helping their businesses by providing liquidity, and basically just the cash flow, in their businesses. So we've been working with the government, and we're still imploring on the government that if this can be sorted out, if our members can get at least some kind of refund on the VAT.
Fish farmers across Kenya are set to benefit from a new financial inclusion program targeting the fisheries sector. The initiative follows a partnership between Equity Group and Microsave Consulting aimed at improving access to credit, insurance, digital tools, and climate-smart technologies for fish farmers and traders. The program will also promote financial literacy and gender equity among women and youth in fishing communities.
Our signing together with Graham brings us back after 25 years of starting an initiative to say we are now wiser, we have insight, we have lessons we have learned. So we could really benefit this collaboration and partnership with the insights we have learned. We bring on board together trust that whenever there is a challenge, we should be able to sit down with Graham and solve it with ease.
We have a combination of climate change and crazy wars going on that are going to threaten food security in Africa. And I cannot think of a better power horse than the Equity Bank and the Equity Foundation to address that really significant challenge. My team are privileged to be working with you will be an understatement, and I don't think we can overstress the importance of our collective mission.
promotion of teams to the Kenya Premier League will have to revert to the 2019 rules and regulations of the Football Kenya Federation due to the ongoing court cases challenging the new 2025 FKF rules. FKF had proposed the top 3 teams in the National Super League be promoted to the KPL, while the bottom 3 in the KPL be relegated to the NSL. The 2019 rules allow only 2 automatic promotion and relegation, with the 3rd team in the NSL playing off against the 16th team in the KPL.
It is my wish and hope that within the next, let's say, month or 2, we will have settled the matter decisively, and we will have, of course, the relevant processes adhered to. Remember, most of these decisions also have to go through due process, which includes NEC, which includes Congress, for some of them to be adopted. So we may have maybe had capacity gaps in the processes, but those will be cured now with the next steps that we are going to take for the 2026 regulations.
The Kenya Premier League matches postponed last week will be played tomorrow across various grounds in Nairobi. Relegated Sofapaka take on KCB FC at the Kasarani Annex as outgoing champions Kenya Police FC welcome relegation threatened Kariobangi Sharks at the Police Sacco Stadium. Ulinzi Stars, who are also fighting for survival, host Tusker FC at the Ulinzi Sports Complex. In Homa Bay, newly crowned champions Gor Mahia will be away to Mara Sugar in a rescheduled match.
Build up safi kabisa, aliingia ndani kucheza half space pale. Beneze Dukwao akapanda, Polo Choga akamimina crossi.
Madagascar is the first country to arrive in Nairobi for the UFAC Region East Karate Championship set for 28th to 31st of this month at the Nyayo National Stadium Indoor Arena. Madagascar have arrived early as they signal their intention to conquer the tournament in Nairobi. Madagascar has over the years built a formidable reputation on the African karate scene and is widely regarded as one of the continent's powerhouses. 11 more countries are expected to arrive between Wednesday and Friday. Before the tournament starts on Saturday, there will be technical training sessions and seminars for referees and coaches on Thursday and Friday. Kenya has assembled a strong squad, but they will be pushed to the limit by traditional karate countries of Africa, that's Madagascar, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda and Ethiopia. Football fever is spreading in the World Cup host city of Toronto ahead of the summer showcase, with hundreds of fans gathering downtown to catch a rare glimpse of the sport's most iconic trophy. Former Italian defender and 2006 World Cup winner Alessandro Nesta was on site to unveil the gleaming 18-carat solid gold World Cup trophy, which was in town as part of a global tour leading up to the tournament's June 11 kickoff. Outside Toronto's City Hall, families stood in line to take photos with the trophy. While Canada is known as a passionate hockey country, football is its strongest, fastest growing sport, especially among youth. The World Cup is expected to help the sport grow even more in Toronto through the opening of mini pitches across the city. All right, so as we conclude the show today, let's take a look at some more of your feedback. All right, this one from Mose Young says, watching live from Kiambu County, the finance bill should target politicians, especially those who are in office. Starting with Parliament, scrap seating allowances for the MPs plus salaries should be reduced to 150K. All right. Raz Bashir Were says, is the finance bill designed to grow Kenya's economy or simply increase government revenue collection to fill budget deficits? Why does every finance bill appear to target ordinary workers, traders and consumers instead of reducing privileges for politicians? Engineer Lazaro says higher levy on M-Pesa transactions will severely affect cash flow, especially on small-scale businesses, and eventually collapse innovations. No, let me read this last one. Samuel Awad says the finance bill should not be viewed as a weapon against Wananchi, but as part of a broader effort to stabilize our economy, reduce overdependence on debt, and support long-term development. All right, that's where we leave it for now. Remember, those hearings continue, I believe, after next week when they conclude in Nairobi. They will be going around the counties as well. So please do make your voice heard. Many thanks to you for watching and for to my panelists tonight for their time and insights on the program. Joki Shege is our sign language interpreter, and I am Yvonne Aquara. Have a good night.